This is A World on Purpose.
A purposeful life is the most important kind and the most valuable kind of life.
Every choice that we make makes a difference, for better or worse.
I loved walking in a village and seeing the before and after.
This is the podcast dedicated to those humans choosing to live larger by working for the greater good. And these are their stories. Stories of hope and of true change that come from living on purpose.
What if you were to suddenly say there are no challenges, there are only opportunities?
Regardless of where you come from, your financial identity shouldn't determine where you end up in life.
I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, and my hope is that my inspiring guests will take you on an introspective journey that helps you tap into your own pivot to purpose, bringing greater meaning to your life. Welcome to A World on Purpose. Hey everyone, it's me, Alyssa Fisher-Harris, your host of A World on Purpose, and today we're going to talk about mentorship. And I'm curious if you've ever experienced when someone in your life took you under their wing as a valued mentor, giving you guidance in your life or your work? Or have you yourself perhaps stepped into the role of a mentor, imparting all of your life experiences and knowledge on those individuals that needed that little extra boost to propel them forward and empower them on their path to success? Well, I was introduced to that very person, Carrie Rich, CEO and co-founder of Global Good Fund, by a longtime colleague I had the honor of collaborating with to advance past nonprofit work. So let me give a quick shout out to my friend Laura Rayton for making this great intro. Thank you, Laura. You're the best. Laura landed a great role at Global Good Fund and contacted me to tell me all the impactful reasons why Carrie would be a fantastic guest. And she wasn't wrong, and today you'll get to see why. At the very young age of 26, Carrie experienced firsthand what it was like for someone of a senior position to really see something in her and take her under his wing and be her mentor. That experience not only made her feel valued, heard, and like she could do anything in life, it also sparked her pivot to purpose. That aha epiphany moment when she said, what if everyone had the opportunity to have a mentor, both in personal leadership development, as well as to offer tangible tools to navigate starting and leading an organization? Then they would have an additional edge to succeed at that very thing they're trying to do. And so the Global Good Fund was born, an organization focused entirely on supporting these emerging young businesses and organizational leaders as fellows, offering them the tools as well as the emotional support that they need to take their dreams and endeavors to the next level. Listen here today as Carrie shares her profound experience as a mentee and how out of that, with a single gift of $100 from her mentor, she raised $2 million in 2 weeks to start her powerful organization that's making huge impact 9 years later. Please enjoy my time with Carrie Rich. Good day, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in the world. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris of A World on Purpose, and thank you so much for coming back again with me today. I get super jazzed every week being able to bring you all of the coolest people that I feel honored to be able to talk to on the planet and feel like would be an inspiration to you as you are seeking, finding, advancing, supporting your purpose in life. And today, my guest is this awesome woman I had the opportunity to meet through a mutual contact that I've known for years with my involvement in the past with the National Women's History Museum, who now works for this organization. Shout out to Laura for bringing us together. My guest today is Carrie Rich. Beautiful, inside and out, just so extraordinary. She is the CEO of an organization called Global Good Fund and also the managing director of the Global Impact Fund. And just before I bring her in to say hello, I'm just going to tell you a quick little snippet about what the Global Good Fund does. They took this idea of pairing experienced business mentors with emerging young social entrepreneurs. Everyone needs help. People don't know everything. And so the idea of bringing people together and being able to put those two entities in one space to help elevate these young social entrepreneurs is what they do. And so I am going to bring Carrie Rich, Miss Carrie Rich, coming live to me. She'll tell us where she's from. And so welcome to A World on Purpose, Carrie.
So good to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Why don't you tell everybody where you're coming in from today? I always love to give people the idea of where we are in the world.
Yeah, so I am located in Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C., and I chose to live. I said to my husband, if we're not going to be in the middle of everything, let's be in the middle of nowhere. So we've been in the middle of nowhere, with just surrounded by land and some animals and cornfields for a few years now, and now a lot of people are moving out of cities. So we've been
That's great. Yeah, I actually just did the mass exodus myself. I think I shared I was in Los Angeles, Venice for almost 20 years and moved back to where I've had roots, Napa Valley. So I did that as well. It's nice to make change, I think, and listen to that instinct to
Yes.
go where you need to go.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So Carrie, really, really excited to share with people about this concept that you created around the Global Good Fund. And we're going to get deeper into that. We sort of break the show up into 3 parts to give people an opportunity to take a break, get water, come back and listen to the great content. But we always start with your origin story, because to me, that's the most powerful point of connection, that aha moment when you realized, wow, I could do something larger than myself. How can I put my life, my talents, my networks towards something for the greater good that's meaningful to others and to me? So before we get into what the Global Good Fund is and all the great work you've done, would you please share with everyone your backstory? Because I loved it.
So I guess my aha moment starts with kind of the most menial tasks you can be asked to do. Things like folding laundry, pushing the snack cart, mopping the floor. That's the genesis of my aha moment. I was in graduate school and was doing an internship in a healthcare organization, a hospital, as part of studies in health administration. And my mentor, partway through the program, left to go become the CEO elsewhere. And I just really needed this internship to finish my degree. So I said, I'll do anything, which is what I got, anything. And the lowest level jobs in the hospital. And one of those jobs was taking attendance. And who should walk in the room while I'm responsible for taking attendance at this meeting, but the CEO of the whole health system. And I'd learned that he had been building the health infrastructure in Haiti for 25 years simultaneously while growing this multi-billion-dollar healthcare organization in Virginia. I thought, wow, this is someone who knows a lot about business and also knows about living a life of purpose. This is someone I want to learn from. And so I thought to myself, why would the CEO of a big company talk to the intern who's taking attendance and mopping the floor? And I thought, I'm sure everyone asks a CEO of a health organization to talk about healthcare. So I'm going to ask him about something completely different, about living a life of purpose. And shockingly, he said yes to the meeting. And so I got all dressed up in my, dark suit and my closed-toed pumps and my stocking. I was ready to go in this formal setting. And I held it together the entire meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, I was so impressed and I'd learned so much that I didn't want the conversation to end. So I asked if he would write a book with me. So I thought, then we'll get to have many more conversations and I can continue learning from him. And he said, sure. So I lost all composure and just jumped out of my chair and said, it's fantastic. What do we write about? And of course, I had no idea. I was just trying to find a way to work together. And that writing project with another co-author turned into a job. And when I was working for him in something like a chief of staff type role, a couple years went by and I realized when you get to work for the CEO of a big company, you get a platform and opportunities that other people may not have access to. And it was a place of privilege. And my boss's name, it was Knox Singleton. And to this day, we're still in touch and he's helped grow the Global Good Fund in really meaningful ways. And what he did that was so great at that time was he mentored me and sponsored me and coached me and pulled me up. And I thought, I'm so fortunate to get to work for someone like this. And there are young people all over the world who work really hard and never get this kind of chance. And they have a strong work ethic, a strong moral compass. And if we could pair these emerging, socially oriented entrepreneurs with seasoned business executives and put them together as a catalyst for social good with some targeted capital, we could really make a positive difference in the world. So I went to my boss, Knox, with that idea. And he said, that's really nice, Carrie. Could you please go back to doing your job? I did. And for my 26th birthday, he gave money. He gave $100. And he said, this is the money I would have spent taking you and your friends, your colleagues to, pizza lunch for your birthday. Now you can go live out this idea. And, I didn't know what you would do with $100 that would have any kind of impact. And so I wrote to family and friends, people who I'd communicated with once, and explained that my boss gave me some lunch money. And if we could all contribute a little bit, maybe it would add up to a lot. And here are the organizations I would try to help. If we could raise $6,000 was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I never tried fundraising before, but I thought, if we each gave up a coffee once a week, maybe that would be something. And lo and behold, fast forward 2 weeks, we had raised $2 million. My boss gave significantly, and as did other people, and we were in business. And so I had never dreamed of, launching a nonprofit organization or co-founding one. But really, the medium was the message, in that having someone who believed in me made me want to pay it forward and believe in other people.
Honestly, that's just extraordinary. I mean, it used 2 weeks from $100 to $2 million.
Right.
That's kind of unheard
I'm still
of.
pinching myself.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. And that speaks volumes also to you and in your passion and belief in it yourself and believing in yourself. Let's talk a little bit about that, because, and thank you for sharing that. That was your aha moment. But there was more that got you to this place of understanding what the value of purpose was. And you shared with me about how you grew up and your childhood a little bit, and what instilled that sense of needing to have a sense of purpose in your life. Can you talk a little bit about that? So, because I think those things are so important to understand, like, where do these things originate from? Even though we had an aha moment, some of these things evolve through our life from birth to getting to that point of $2 million extraordinary dollars.
Sure. Well, I grew up with my parents. I was in a 2-parent household, which was a really stable way to grow up. And our big change was moving next door when I was a year old. And so there's a lot of stability and, a really strong safety net. So I knew that it was safe to take chances. That was one realization I had growing up. The other aspect of my childhood was, we always ate family dinner together every night of the week. There wasn't one night that was family dinner. It happened every night. And, people are busy and there's work and extracurricular activities, but we always waited for each other to eat together. And at dinner, my parents were both federal employees, and they both worked in healthcare, the health system, and they would talk about the system and how the system works. And it was a real service mentality. And I guess it's no surprise then that both my sibling and I went into service-oriented careers, but it helped us think in a really big picture way. They were dealing with policy. Mm-hmm. And helping to think about how big systems impact individual people. When I was in high school, I decided to pursue, really my guidance counselor said that there was an opportunity. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I thought that was the best way to, help people. And it didn't dawn on me that I wasn't particularly great at science, but I decided to try to pursue that track anyway. And my guidance counselor identified a really amazing program at Georgetown University. It was a summer program. You got to go stay at Georgetown for 10 days, and it was with students from across the country. And you applied to be in this program. And when I was there, I got to see how the system impacted one person. And I saw the same man use a special pass to ride the bus. And then the same person showed up at the food pantry. Mm. And then the same person, when we were touring the hospital, collapsed in the emergency room. Mm. I thought to myself, wow, something is really broken. This system is not serving this person. Mm-hmm. And I realized for me that, I probably didn't have the abilities or natural inclination to be a physician anyway, but that really, figuring out how I could contribute to the system was a meaningful way for me to move forward. And during that experience, I actually came back and told my parents I wanted to go there, go to DC for graduate school in health administration. They told me to, start saving, honey, which is what I did.
Right.
During that experience, I met a friend who's become a lifelong friend, and we ended up volunteering together for years in Jamaica through nonprofit organization there, bringing computer literacy and really serving the community by supporting the community, that the community could lead itself. And if we could be empowering and supportive and provide a hand up, rather than a handout, that would be the best way to serve the community. And so during that experience, I would go to Jamaica about 5 times a year, more or less. And I remember we would spend one day literally in the largest trash center in Riverton, Jamaica, so where all the trash got thrown. And we'd go to the community center there. And then in the evening, we would be at the U.S. Ambassador's house to Jamaica, networking and fundraising when we were teenagers. And and I would fundraise to be able to go on this trip in the first place. And so it really helped me understand that it was important to be able to relate to people who lived with trash as well as with the ambassador. And that you couldn't have one, it wasn't enough to be able to relate to one group. You wanted to be able to relate to people on the front line as well as in places of power.
Absolutely. And I resonate with that too. Just sharing with you how I grew up, on and off homeless as a kid and understanding the perils of humanity and then trying to fit in places in all walks of life, from that arena all the way up to being able to be with high level executives. And on that note, you were so young when you started this Global Good Fund. I mean, you were what, 25, 26, you said?
20, turning 26. Yep.
26. And I just want to backtrack even a little further into your story, because I remember poignantly, you just talked about wanting to go to Georgetown, and your parents said, you better start saving, honey. You came from, even though it wasn't as impoverished as some, you still came from very humble beginnings, but you had a lot of friends, I remembered you sharing with me, that were from very privileged, wealthy families. So you had that exposure early also, and that helped you. You want to talk a little bit about how that helped your confidence?
Thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah, sure.
I grew up in a really affluent suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. And like I said, both of my parents were career federal employees. And so, I remember Sundays were for cutting coupons, and we would drive the extra way to go get gas that was 4 cents cheaper. And they were really thoughtful about how we spent money. And we knew that the kids were the priority, but we didn't take lavish vacations, or we were very we were very careful about eating out and just thoughtful about how the family spent and saved money. And I learned later that, it took a long time for me to realize actually that my friends' parents were all very senior in their lines of work. They were either the CEO or the CEO of global corporations, or where they were the partners of law firms, or the firm was named after them. I mean, they were the best professionally at what they did, the leaders of what they did professionally. And because they were my friends' parents, I grew up being comfortable with the idea that there was no limit on how high you could rise if you wanted to professionally, that I was comfortable interacting with these types of people because I'd been exposed to them literally since childhood, that having a conversation with the CEO of a company was having a conversation with so-and-so's mother or father. And also grew up in a place where all of my closest friends both parents were working. And so it really also gave me an appreciation for women who were committed to working really hard to, growing a career. And so I always assumed that was a natural assumption that would be part of the deal for me.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I wanted to point that out specifically because all of this collectively ties into why you created Global Good Fund. And the idea of mentorship on all levels, the idea of relatability, even if you don't come from the background that you're trying to support, you have that radical compassion and understanding for as much as you can for people who are in marginalized communities. And I know you very much focus on women of color and et cetera. So that is awesome. I mean, I just love hearing people's journey through that process to purpose. And so thank you for sharing all of that. I think this is a good place for us to take just a quick break, because now we're going to dive into all of that and how that segued into this incredible Global Good Fund. And I still can't get over that you raised $2 million in 2 weeks. I have to understand how you did that, because that is probably a case study that a lot of people can learn from. So let's take a quick break here. Everyone go grab your water, like we like to say, or take a quick breath on purpose. And we'll be right back with Carrie Rich. And we're going to dive into what the Global Good Fund is, the kind of work that they do, and some of these incredible, amazing humans that they have, the lives that they've touched, both on the mentor side and also on the mentee side. And I actually interviewed one of their amazing mentees on my show early in season 1. So we'll be right back, everyone. Okay, everyone, we're back with Carrie Rich. Thanks for taking a break with us. And we were talking, Carrie, with you earlier about your origin story and all these incredible experiences that helped you develop the confidence to pursue purpose, the compassion to pursue purpose on behalf of others that might not be like yourself, and the ability to start this organization at the age of 26, which is amazing, and raise, from $100 to $2 million in 2 weeks to start this idea you had called the Global Good Fund. We're going to get into that now. And in your words, I would like you to describe what the Global Good Fund is and what it does. And then we're going to talk about some of the tangible work that you've been able to do through the program for all these incredible mentees and mentors.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to share the Global Good Fund story. So Global Good Fund is a nonprofit organization. We've been around since 2013, and we're a social enterprise, which I'll get into in a little bit, how we operate. But the premise is we look all over the country and throughout the world for really talented social entrepreneurs. And these are incredible leaders who have already taken a dive from an airplane. They're building a parachute on the way down. They have started a company that seems to be working. Maybe they've done a pilot and it's worked in the local community, or they've sold a product or service and they're ready to scale their business regionally or nationally or perhaps globally. And what these entrepreneurs are looking for is leadership development. When you take a step away from a corporate environment, you look to your right, you look to your left, there's no one there, you're by yourself. And so these are really humble individuals who know they can benefit from leadership support and are also hungry to make a difference through their businesses. And so they apply to Global Good Fund. We get over 3,000 applications per year.
Wow.
One of 12 Global Good Fund fellows. And we have supported entrepreneurs in over 40 countries to date. So truly across the US and all over the world. And what we do is we spend the first 6 months just doing due diligence. We sift through 3,000 different candidates, have multiple filters. We bring in external expertise. About 100 volunteers help us sift through the candidates.
Wow.
And then once selected, these entrepreneurs, the first thing they do is have an orientation that involves a 360 leadership assessment. And what that does is it's a proprietary tool of the Global Good Fund to assess an individual's leadership at a given point in time. So where do I stand today? What are my strengths? What are my opportunities? And this is all from a social impact perspective. Mm-hmm. So that's what's unique about the Global Good Fund's approach. We're looking at leadership from a social impact standpoint. Once the entrepreneur gets the results of their 360 leadership assessment, each entrepreneur gets an executive coach. And this is someone who's certified, credentialed, has years of experience, and is really looking to give back in a different way. So these are individuals, executive coaches who work one-on-one with each entrepreneur to interpret the results of the 360 assessment and then help the entrepreneur craft a leadership development plan. Mm-hmm. And what that is really a roadmap for here's what I'm going to do during the 12 months of my fellowship program. And a lot of people want to set, 12 goals a quarter for themselves, and that's just not realistic. So, what are your top 3 goals per quarter? And how are you going to achieve them? And then Global Good Fund provides the financial support to implement that leadership plan, as long as a business mentor. And the business mentor is a seasoned business executive who's had a really successful career and is looking to translate that business success into social significance. The business mentor works one-on-one with each social entrepreneur and has been running typically a $40 million to $60 billion company. So it's this opportunity to give time and perspective in a way that directly communicates, I believe in you. The full duration of the fellowship program is 1 year. And we've always been virtual in our delivery because we believe in investing in people in place, which is on the front lines of where they're delivering their company's products or services. And usually once a year, we'll bring together all the entrepreneurs to connect with each other and do some peer networking and curated learning. We have a leadership development summit to connect with each other, with the alumni, with their executive coach, their business mentor, and learn together. So that's the goal.
That's brilliant. And I'm guessing when you first started, I mean, as anything that we start, it has iterations of development. When you first started, is it a reminiscent of what you thought it would be when you first started, or has it had all these different transitions and turned into this now amazing machine that you have that's mentoring all these great young social entrepreneurs?
I can't say I envisioned it being this. It's so wonderful to wake up every day and be completely inspired by people who are making a difference in the world. So I couldn't even fathom how great that is. I think when we first started, we thought, these tremendous emerging social entrepreneurs, and then you have coaches and mentors who are really talented in their own right. Mm-hmm. And what we thought originally was, give them the freedom to do what they want with each other. And what we found was that having a more structured approach actually suited everyone better. It led to greater accountability. It led to greater delivery of the leadership goals. And what we found was that the entrepreneurs that we work with, we engaged Emory University through a third-party study funded by Kaufman to study how well is this working. You have this hypothesis that if you invest in and you grow that person, the individual will grow the company and positively impact society. But how well is it working? And so we were very grateful to learn that our entrepreneurs, as compared to a control group of 52 other fellowship programs, were raising 3 times the capital.
Wow.
In these other programs, because they were focusing, we think, on themselves. And that so often, and this is especially relevant these days, you focus on everyone else but yourself and make sure the business is going, make sure everyone else is taken care of. But there's less emphasis on how do we take care of ourselves and make sure our own leadership is growing and thriving to be able to support our businesses and the communities that we're so privileged to serve.
Right. Wow. That's extraordinary. And to date, how many mentors, mentees have you said how many people have you been able to usher in?
We just got our new numbers for 2020. So we're up to about 200 social entrepreneurs that we've supported domestically and around the globe. Our track record is pretty diverse in terms of women entrepreneurs. About half of our entrepreneurs are women, about 60% are people of color. Mm-hmm. And we found that, putting aside the moral argument, there's just a huge part of the economy that's overlooked, and that we are very interested in supporting and growing by investing in diverse demographics. And these 200 entrepreneurs have raised over $115 million in venture capital, traditional VC capital. They've positively impacted 9 million lives around the globe to date, and they've created 4,000 indirect jobs and permanent jobs directly with their company. So they're making a tremendous difference in this idea that you can invest in one person. If you do that enough, there's a ripple effect. Really keeps me going every day.
Absolutely. I just talked about that on one of my other shows recently. It's that proverbial pebble in the pond. As soon as you drop it in, it does have that ripple effect and that reach beyond that one little drop, which I love so much. That is awesome. And in fact, one of your fellows is somebody I absolutely adore. I think we both absolutely adore beyond words. Abby Wimemo, the co-founder of isusurents.com. And he was one of my guests. He was one of my early guests. And I didn't even know, I hadn't known you yet. And I didn't know that you had been your fellow. So it's just one of those weird, serendipitous, like everything comes back around in this world of purpose. Let's talk a little bit about him for a second, because his story is pretty extraordinary, going from you. Can you talk about your experience with him?
Yes. So I met Abby.
Shout out, first of all, by the way, to Abby. We love you.
Abby. Yes. I met Abby through his co-founder, Samir, who separately had gone through the Global Good Fund Fellowship, actually with a different company. Mm-hmm. And I met Abby through an Unsummit, which is, we host the annual summit through the Global Good Fund that brings together all the entrepreneurs in a more formal setting. And then the alumni organized this Unsummit, where they organized one trip to go hiking in Switzerland. People flew in from around the world to spend time in South Africa as another Unsummit. So I met Abby in Switzerland hiking. And he's one of these people who just has the hunger in the belly and light in the eye, that, he's making a difference. And so He already is. And so I met Abby, and he applied through Isusu to the Global Good Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And we were really taken with the idea that Isusu embraces on financial inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And Abby's story is, as you heard in a prior podcast, he immigrated from Nigeria, grew up in a single parent household. His father passed away when he was really young. And he came to the US for an education and showed up with his mother and went to the bank to try to get a loan. And the bank wouldn't give them a loan because no one had credit. There was no American credit score. So he ended up borrowing money at a 400% interest rate, 400% interest rate because he didn't have a credit score.
Mm-hmm.
And this was to get educated, and obviously that didn't feel right to him. So he and his co-founder Samir created Isusu, which is a financial inclusion company. And what they found was that, people consistently pay their rent. They want to make sure their rental payments are paid so it's not to become homeless.
Right.
And when that happens, you pay every single month for years. It still doesn't guarantee that there's a credit score established in your name. And so Isusu partners with landlords across the country and has helped over 300,000 people in America go from having no credit score to having a credit score. And those credit scores have increased by 20 to 100 points per person. And I'll say during COVID, Isusu also launched a rent relief fund, which the Global Fund also contributed to. So in addition to, supporting the fellowship program, supporting Samir and Abby through the fellowship program, we also contributed to their rent relief fund so people can stay in their homes, and then, went on to invest in Isusu through our impact fund.
Yeah, that's just one of my favorite examples. And I thank you for talking about it again, because even though we talked about him already and I interviewed him on A World on Purpose, I want to point it out that there's the intersection again of purpose and people aligning around purpose and wanting to do something for the greater good. Somehow we're all led to each other in some strange way. And so I just love that we both adore him, knew him, that you helped shepherd him and his genius idea with his partner Samir to this incredible thing that's making serious impact in people's lives.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, people just need a platform or someone to say, I believe in you early on. At this point, Isusu is doing really well. And there's a lot of people, surrounding the company and the co-founders. But early on, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And to be able to provide mentoring, coaching, some financial resources, a platform, a network can really make a difference. And a lot of times these entrepreneurs like Abby are so great that your job is to give a platform and really get out of the way so that they can continue to be, fulfilling their potential.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about something that you're very passionate about too. Abby's a great example, but you really, really do try to, like you said, usher in women, and especially women in marginalized communities, which we know, and the United Nations knows, and WHO knows, and the Sustainable Development Goals, and everyone, that if we do not support women, and especially women in marginalized communities of color, we will never reach the Sustainable Development Goals. We won't be able to elevate humans. Can we talk a little bit about some of the amazing, tangible difference you've made and examples of these incredible women I was reading about who you guys have supported? Some of the highlights of some of these women that are doing these great things in the world that you've been able to mentor.
Thank you. Yeah. And, domestically, less than 2.8% of venture capital money goes to support women-led companies.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And yet women are starting businesses at an incredibly high rate. And so, we're overlooking part of the economy again. And so we've had really phenomenally talented women apply to the Global Good Fund. And one example is Veronica Scott. She's based in Detroit, and she runs a company called the Empowerment Plan. And Veronica was an industrial engineer. She herself was homeless at one point, and she decided to create a product where the production of the product also goes to employ people and educate and train. And so the Empowerment Plan started by creating coats that turn into sleeping bags. And I actually was just wearing my coat earlier today from the Empowerment Plan, and it's the best coat I've ever owned from a warmth standpoint. It's just so functional. But also I'm really proud of the story, because the story is that Veronica works with mostly women, formerly homeless women who are dependent, so have dependents. So when they come to the Empowerment Plan, they're homeless and they have a dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And the empowerment plan allocates time each day, paid time to get educated, to get training, and then to sew coats that turn into sleeping bags that are also used by a homeless community. And during COVID, the empowerment plan started creating PPE equipment, to protect frontline workers. And so now you had homeless women with dependents creating protective equipment that was protecting the rest of society. Mm-hmm. And there's an incredible rate. It's really, really impressive that these women who are coming from a homeless background without a lot of education or training in some instances, the goal is actually to not have them stay at the empowerment plan, is to get folks, permanent housing and help them grow in their careers beyond the empowerment plan. So I'm really impressed by and a proud supporter of the empowerment plan.
Oh my God, I love that so much. For me personally, anything that helps homeless women, especially with children, is just so meaningful. I want a coat that turns into a sleeping bag.
Amazing.
That's such a genius idea too. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, are there any other examples of the mentees that you'd like to share? Because I want to get a little bit into the mentors and talk a little bit about them and how that's meaningful as well. Because I think that's important to discuss.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can go there. That's great. I've been so privileged to have great mentors. Mm-hmm. And you never get set up to say, here's how you go get a mentor. Mm-hmm. And especially the more high up professionally an executive is, the less likely it seems they are to be a mentor.
Absolutely.
And so one part of our model was really kind of, it takes one to know one. Mm-hmm. And so the co-founder of the Global Good Fund, Knox Singleton, when we co-founded Global Good Fund, he was running a multi-billion-dollar company for longer than I'd been alive. And he was simultaneously growing the health system in Haiti and the community infrastructure in Haiti. And someone like that is rare. I mean, most people are not doing that. Mm-hmm. And so really the idea was he reached out to his network and his peers. And that was one of my learnings, was I'm so grateful for a co-founder, because the reaction would have been different had I just come knocking. But when someone else can open a door for you, which is what mentors do, and you can go running through, mm-hmm. it makes all the difference. And so our mentor network really started with Knox that reached out to his peer network, and then started to snowball once people saw that the Global Good Fund was a platform for really established, talented, successful business executives. Mm-hmm. And again, these are people leading $40 million to $60 billion companies, had a platform to truly make a difference. And it wasn't administrative. It was to directly interact with people whose lives they probably wouldn't intersect with, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Day to day. And so it was actually a gift to the mentors also, because it allowed them to stay relevant with what's happening mm-hmm. More broadly in the world, what the current trends are, what young people care about, and this premise that business long-term will have a social impact component to it at every level of society. And so the mentors we're looking for are really successful at what they do and also have hearts of gold.
Yeah, that's definitely, I want to get a little bit more into the heart of gold part two. This is a good place for us to take just a quick break, because we're going to come back and I want to touch a little bit more on the mentor side of it, because I think when you're an executive and you're a professional and you're so busy and you're tapped out and there's so many things pulling you in directions besides work, family, your exercise, like anything you need to do, sometimes the idea of thinking you could be a mentor might seem a little bit out of reach. And so I want to talk a little bit about the heart of gold part. So everybody, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with Carrie. We're going to dive into that. And then we're also going to talk about with Carrie in our third part, a little bit about the struggles along the way of building the Global Good Fund and the challenges and the times where we like to talk about the trials and tribulations of purpose and the words of wisdom that she can share with us on our journeys as well. So we'll be right back, everyone, and come back with us after you go take a break. Okay, everybody, I hope you took your break, got a glass of water, a snack, and get ready to dive in with me and Carrie around the idea of mentorship. Carrie, I wanted to talk about something you just mentioned around clearly mentors that come and be part of your program are very high-performing executives, you said, and that are actually imparting these mentorship words of wisdom and skill set knowledge and everything else to help the companies advance to another level. But the idea of mentorship, you talked also they have a heart of gold. How do you feel it also impacts their life from a personal, emotional currency standpoint? So for me, for example, I was so honored and blessed to have been reached out to by someone who's very close to me now, who was the nephew of somebody that I was very, very close to and loved. And I met him several years ago in DC. He's a young man who was in communications, and we met. And he said, when I'm getting ready to graduate as a senior, can I reach out to you and will you be my mentor? And I was stunned. I was like, what? Me? Like, who am I to be somebody's mentor? Almost that imposter syndrome type of thing. And he actually did reach out to me in his senior year. And I've been mentoring this incredibly intelligent, brilliant young man. Shout out to Theo Asimenios. And for me, it's not a company that I'm mentoring. It's actually a person trying to usher him into where he wants to be in his life and his career. So it's not exactly the same thing, but it has provided for me the most incredible emotional currency. Like I feel like, wow, everything I've ever been through in my life, from business to personal things to all that stuff, I've been able to help in some way impart words of wisdom and create this bond and this wonderful relationship. Could you talk a little bit about that for the mentors? And do they share that with you? How is that for them?
Sure. Well, I think everyone wants to live a life of purpose. Everyone I've ever met wants their life to matter. Mm-hmm. Wants to have meaning in their lives, wants to live a life of purpose in some way. And it's the way that comes out is different for each person. But most people want to be part of something greater than themselves. And a really natural way to do that is to contribute meaningfully to someone else's life. Mm-hmm. And at the Global Good Fund, we're focused on the individual. Mm-hmm. We're focused on the individual more than the business. Of course, the individual grows the business, and that's how we positively impact society. But at the end of the day, we're trying to support the individual social entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the challenges that individuals face, they're personal. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It's my family wants me to do this, but I feel a calling to do that. Mm-hmm. Or I'm really struggling with this other person. I don't know how to handle this situation. Or this doesn't feel right with my code of ethics internally. I don't know how to handle this. What have you done in the past? And, as much as we would, you'd think that it would be business questions, so often the support we really need is personal.
Absolutely.
And I think business executives so often get asked about numbers and business strategy. It's really grounding for them to have personal conversations and for people to come to them on topics that aren't about their day-to-day business lives. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges in finding business executives to volunteer as mentors is that, you're not, as an organization, we're not in a position to judge someone else's ability to be a mentor. Mm-hmm. We can welcome folks and give them a platform to serve. And I think the most important part there is to remove anything administrative from that relationship. So no one running a huge company wants to do anything administrative. So our goal as an organization is to set them up to make a difference, to be able to live a life of purpose through Global Good Fund and be proud of the contributions they're making to another entrepreneur. I learned the same lesson you did, which was there's never too early a time to consider being a mentor for someone else. And I think the way that I've gone about personally growing a mentor network is when I was in school, I would update the people in my life who I found really people I wanted to emulate. Mm-hmm. And I would send them an email, blind copied twice a year, just telling them what I was thinking about and what I was up to. And then when it came time to have a career, to try to start working, they were on board. They helped me grow the Global Good Fund.
Mm-hmm.
They were part of because they had been part of the mentoring journey. And sometimes I didn't even realize how involved they were, but I was consistently communicating with them. And it made a really natural segue to ask them to say, could you mentor other people?
Mm-hmm.
You so much, could you mentor other people? And again, I think most people want to make a difference. And if we can make it easy for other people to make a difference, it's a real gift, and it works both ways.
I completely agree. Especially, when you're, again, performing at that high level, it's hard to think, oh, could I add one more thing to my life? But if you can, it will reap rewards inside your heart for all time. Like it just will. And so to the mentor idea, we obviously know how people can apply to be, as part of the Global Good Fund as a fellow. Is there a process for being a mentor? Is there a waiting list? Can somebody just call you up and be like, hey, I want to be a mentor? How does that work?
So we're as selective with our mentors as we are with our fellows, and we actually give both the mentors and the entrepreneurs a chance to choose each other. So we want to make sure, it's as much an art as a science here, but we make sure that that's a good culture fit, and it's a good personality fit, and a good industry fit. So the way it works is, for anyone interested in potentially mentoring with the Global Good Fund, we have a website, globalgoodfund.org, and you can sign up for our newsletter or directly contact us there. And then we also host salons, we call them, where we bring together the types of business executives that we're talking about in a setting to talk about living a life of purpose. And we intentionally don't do that in a work setting. We intentionally, do that in people's homes or virtually during COVID times, to make sure that it's comfortable and it's personal, and people can tell us about their personal stories. And when people share their personal stories, you learn things that you wouldn't learn about them as human beings if you were sitting in an office someplace. So we really try to remove the formality from the conversation, where we focus on living a life of purpose. We expose these business executives to our fellows who are inspiring in their own rights, and then give them an opportunity to make a difference through the Global Good Fund. And we're always looking for amazingly talented, heart of gold mentors.
Great. And we'll reemphasize that when we wrap with kind of a call to action. And I love that you guys have people talk about their personal stories in those salons, because the old adage of there's no room for emotion in business, or there's no emotion in business, is not true.
Outdated.
It's outdated. Yeah. It's not true. And it's there. No one can perform in a sustainable, high performing way when you eliminate these things that we need to talk about. And I think COVID has really brought that to the forefront with, all of the challenges of remote workers and people needing mentors to talk to, mental health, boundaries on work-life balance, all those things. So I'm really happy that you are allowing people to share about themselves and not just their work. I think that's extraordinarily important. On that note, you and I were talking a little bit about, what the challenges are when you try to pursue this life of purpose. Clearly, you, my business partners, people I know in this field, but definitely your fellows, it's not an easy road to take this life of purpose when you want to do something larger than yourself. And so share with us a little bit about what you told me around, some of the fears you were experiencing, during this development, and what you did to help keep yourself going. What could you share with everyone when they feel like, I don't know if I can do it, or I'm scared to step into it?
Right. So I have so many fears and mistakes along the way. I'll pick a few to share, and nudge me here if there's other ones to share. But I think the first scary thing is actually taking the dive and going for it. And in my case, I left a really stable work environment where there was a track. I was working for the CEO and growing under his leadership professionally. And instead, I decided to go work for a startup nonprofit organization, which has no security, no guarantee of any path forward, but the promise of making a difference. And I really decided to take a leap of faith there. But my co-founder was wise enough to say, why don't you have a financial plan? He actually sat me down with some napkins, and we wrote out, my goals, and made sure that I was designing my life in a way that would not only contribute professionally, but would be personally meaningful, that I could support myself and make sure that, you don't have to give up everything to try to make a difference. So that was one sort of lesson I learned. When we got started with the Global Good Fund, one of the challenges was that my co-founder was in his 60s. I was in my 20s. I'm a smaller person. He is a bigger person. He was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. I was the CEO of a startup nonprofit. And when we went into meetings, I would get really aggravated with him because we would sit down and the person we were meeting with would look at him exclusively during the meeting as though he was the one who was going to further the conversation, the only one. And while he always contributed to conversations, I was the one who would be doing all of the follow-up and maintaining a relationship on behalf of the organization. So I would get aggravated with him. I would say, what are you doing? The person's only talking to you. And so, first of all, it was not natural he was just having a conversation and here I was getting upset with him. Right. So instead of that approach, we realized that we were each sitting on a side, the right side or the left side of the person we were meeting with. And when you do that, the person you're meeting with has to choose which direction to look and can only pick one.
Interesting. Okay.
And so instead, I would sit on one side of the person we were meeting with, and then my co-founder would sit on my other side. And that way the person would look to me or look to him, but they would have to be looking in my direction anyway. And that naturally made things a lot smoother in terms of navigating just age, sex, stereotypes, who leads companies. And so that went on for months before I finally figured out that this was a problem that we could resolve just by sitting in different chairs when we met with people.
Interesting. And as a mentor, how receptive was he to your frustration with that? Did he sounds like he was pretty open anyway, but sometimes in business, people be like, oh, you're overly sensitive. Oh, you're just why are you thinking that? And that's not the case. Right. How did he receive that when you shared that feeling with him?
Yeah, he was very open. And once it was pointed out, it became very obvious to him. But I think, if you're used to people looking at you when you have a conversation, it would be strange if the person we were meeting with didn't look at him from his mindset. And so once I pointed out, he was super open-minded, which is not always the case. So I felt really lucky in that situation.
Great. That's great. And so let's give that out there to anyone who is a high-level executive in business. When somebody who is of the same level or even not, if those feelings are coming up and you provide a safe space for people to share these observations, be open to hearing it because these are real. And it's not just a being oversensitive or a lack of feeling your place in the world. One of the things you shared with me that I loved, I'm always somebody who talks about having a sense of gratitude. And, daily gratitude practice, waking up in the morning, going to bed in the evening, those are the last things I think about all the time to try to keep myself grounded. You actually take it to another level and you write letters to people of gratitude.
Yes. Well, I try to wake up and before my feet hit the floor, I try to, express my gratitude. And I've found that to be a very grounding practice, especially when I'm overwhelmed. So like everyone else, I get overwhelmed at times and there's just so much going on and there's so many demands. And when that happens, I find the best, most effective solution for me is to write letters of gratitude to the people that I'm thankful for. And it's really special still to receive, especially now, really, to receive a letter in the mail when everything is so technologically advanced. When we use technology for so much, to receive, a tangible letter in the mail can be really meaningful. And it shows you took the time to write and cared about another person. So I try to, honestly, it's a soothing method for me. So if you got a thank you note recently, I was probably a little stressed, but in addition, it's a really nice thing to do for other people. So when I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's what I do. I get some notes and write thank you notes.
I think that's great. And I often talk about too, like when you're doing this kind of work, the whole point you're doing this work is really about the we. But in the end, when you are thinking about the we and you're doing things like that, it actually helps comes
Yes.
back and helps heal the self. It soothes the self, which I think is super important. Something I wanted to say too is if there are words of wisdom you could give people, both in two ways. One, living a life of purpose, I want to make sure we're clear to people. It doesn't mean you're not living a meaningful life if you want to stay in a stable job and you don't want to leave that, and you don't want to take this leap of faith of starting something new on your own, etc. But there are ways that if you're feeling a lack of meaning, you can stay in that meaningful job and do something else within that sphere, bringing in something into the company or different things. What are some ideas and advice you could give people that might be feeling like, God, I don't know what my purpose is in life, but I like what I do, or I want to start something new, but I'm scared. Having worked with all these amazing mentors and mentees, I'm sure you've accumulated a bunch, including your own words of wisdom.
Well, I think a good starting point is to think about what annoys you. What ticks you off? What keeps you up at night? What are you thinking about that bothers you so much that you just can't let it go? And that's a good starting point, because if it bothers you that much, there's probably there's an itch there, and there's something you could do about it. And starting in a small way is great. I mean, that's how the ripple effect gets formed. We start small and put one foot in front of the other and start to address the issues, the most pressing issues that really are bothering me or you, for me, has been a really great way of getting started. And in my case, it was that I was bothered that there were people who were being overlooked, who worked just as hard or harder and had strong moral compass, but just didn't get the same opportunities that I was getting. And, that bothered me a decade ago. And so I just started, a little bit. I tried to raise $6,000 and here we are, many years later. And so I think just starting small and deciding this bothers me, and it's not going away unless I decide to do something about it. And then I think being a connector around that issue, so bringing together people who share your sense of being bothered, or sense of wanting to do something about this issue. By being a connector, it really adds value to other people's lives, and that feeling that doesn't go away.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that's really important. Before we wrap too, we didn't touch as deeply on this, so we may need another show for this one, but you've taken this Global Good Fund to another level, and you've actually created an additional support mechanism with the Global Impact Fund. And because we're going to do a call to action at the end, et cetera, I would love for you to talk about that leap of faith and what that's going to do to help advance these amazing young social entrepreneurs.
Sure. So since the beginning of Global Good Fund's existence, we wanted to create revenue streams as a social enterprise. And so we are a nonprofit. So Global Good Fund is a nonprofit. So we do fundraise. But then we also came up with other ways to generate revenue for the organization. And that includes things like selling the component parts of our leadership program, our fellowship, to organizations and companies, as big as companies like Microsoft as a client, to train employees on how to build and thrive in a culture of social impact, to small organizations that want to grow their people in a socially impactful way. So that's been a revenue stream that continues to grow. And then more recently, about 4 years ago, we saw that our entrepreneurs, when we did a great job at leadership development, they needed access to traditional capital. They needed access to capital to scale their businesses. And what happened was venture capitalists started approaching the nonprofit Global Good Fund and saying, who do you have for us to invest in? And these were not impact investors. They were traditional VCs. And we pointed out who to invest in. And the entrepreneurs loved it because they got access to additional capital that they couldn't access through the nonprofit. That's not our mission. And the VCs loved it because they got access to entrepreneurs who had been diligenced for 6 months and effectively de-risked over the course of a year. So everyone loved it except for the Global Good Fund. It was sort of a pat on the back, which is lovely. Better. So 4 years ago, we launched Global Impact Fund 1, which is a for-profit sister company of the Global Good Fund. And the Global Impact Fund invests in for-profit companies for market-leading returns that are social impact businesses. And when we picked our head up 4 years later, after running this company for 4 years, we found that 80% of our portfolio companies were led by people of color and women.
Mm-hmm.
For our second fund, it's Global Impact Fund 2. And this fund, again, explicitly invests in socially impactful businesses in 5 industries, including health, education, the environment, including agriculture, financial inclusion, and economic mobility. And again, we're really interested in overlooked founders who are people of color and women who can unlock so much, nearly $1 trillion of the economy. And so we're really excited to provide on the for-profit side, capital opportunities to grow businesses, and on the nonprofit side, the opportunity to philanthropically grow leadership development.
Great. And are you looking for partners in that endeavor, in that fund? Other investors, people to come in and help you grow the fund?
We're always looking for partners, both at the impact fund and at the nonprofit organization. We're always looking for like-minded individuals who share our mission and sense of purpose.
Yeah. And I think that's important to call out before we ask for your call to action, Carrie, which is on that point. You don't have to be a nonprofit to be able to do good. You can be as somebody. In fact, our friend Abby said we're unapologetically profitable.
Yes.
I've had that said several times, and that's important. You can have a nonprofit and a for-profit together. It doesn't have to be this thing, and there's greatness in all of it.
Yes.
And there are ways to be very creative. So, Carrie, this has been wonderful. I'm just so thrilled to know you and so thrilled at all the incredible work that you're doing for all these amazing social entrepreneurs around the world and advancing all these lives. The ripple effect is just giving me the chills. Before we go, I want you to do 2 things. Tell people where they can find you. And then we always like to do this call to action. How can people help you? How can people get involved so that they feel like maybe they're not ready to step into their own purpose, but they certainly can step into purpose by supporting what you're doing?
Well, I would love to hear from you, and we would love to hear from you as an organization. So check us out at globalgoodfund.org. And we are always interested in identifying really high potential social entrepreneurs support, as well as mentors who want to give back through mentoring, and then companies that want to grow their social impact culture. We'd love to partner with you.
Great. And then you also have the ability for people to donate to the Global Good Fund as well.
Yes, globalgoodfund.org. There's a donate button, prime and center.
Great.
On our website.
Okay, great. We always got to do that call out because you
Thank
can't.
you. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, it's never easy to do it yourself. So I'll do it for you. Well, Carrie Rich, this has been so exciting for me to have you here. I just love everything you're doing. And I can't wait to see what you're going to do next with these next 2 funds and all these incredible people that you're doing in the world for just humanity. It's extraordinary. So thank you so much for coming and joining me today and sharing your story.
Thank you for helping us share our story. We're very grateful.
You bet. And I think it would be nice to do a follow-up eventually with some of your fellows.
Please.
Let's get the rest of them on this show so that people start to learn about what they're doing and how you've been able to impact these great lives.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And so everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today with me and Carrie Rich, CEO of Global Good Fund. I so enjoy being able to share these stories of these mission-driven individuals that are operating from a place of heart and soul. And so if you're, as I always say, if you're seeking for your, trying to find your purpose, you don't know what it is, you want to do something more meaningful, or you are on a purpose-driven path and you need some guidance, people like Carrie and her organization are there for you, including myself. So you can find all of Carrie's information at globalgoodfund.org and also on aworldonpurpose.com. Everything will be there as well. And all the social media handles, et cetera, will be there. Please go to their organization and check them out. If you're interested in being a mentor, if you have a company that you need to be shepherded through a difficult time. And thank you. Thank you so much for just tuning in and listening every week. I am starting this journey terrified, like everyone else, and taking a chance and stepping into my own purpose, being able to bring this information to you. So I really appreciate you being here with me every day. I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher Harris. Thank you for tuning into World on Purpose. And Carrie, I'll see you soon. Thank you for taking this journey into a world on purpose with our incredible guests. To learn more about our amazing guests and their inspiring purpose-driven work, please go to aworldonpurpose.com. Don't forget to look at our call to action of the week to mobilize your desire for purpose into action. A World on Purpose can be found on Apple Podcasts and all the major podcast platforms, and the video version can be found on YouTube. If what you heard today inspires you, please write a review and like and share on the platform of your choice. We'd love to also hear from you and learn your pivot to purpose and the meaningful work that you do that lifts humanity. Send your stories to info@aworldonpurpose.com. I'd like to thank our World on Purpose team for making this show a reality. Once again, I'm your host, Alyssa Fisher-Harris. Thank you for tuning in to A World on Purpose. I look forward to seeing you soon.